But I'll tell you what, when I'm done, my biceps are humongous. Humongous. Like that, bang!
My name is Anthony Bevilacqua, and I'm the host of New York Muscle Radio podcast. My arms have been a weak point for years. When I started training, my arms measured 11 inches. Even after many years of hardcore training, nothing would get them to grow. With the help of my co-host, Big Pete, we set out on a mission to gain 1 solid inch to my arms in 12 weeks.
In the greatest experiment of all.
12 weeks later, this program finally helped me get 18-inch arms. The 12-week arm experiment, the ultimate arm growth program, ebook, the audio book, and the workout video. Pick up your copy now on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
New York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
What's up, guys? New York Muscle Radio, episode number 137, a gym rat's guide to maxing out with Matt Gary. Everyone's favorite gym moment is going for that new personal record. So in today's episode, we invited Matt Gary back on to teach us and give us feedback on how to properly go for a new max attempt and how much weight we should be putting on the bar. So this is a must listen to podcast. And if you're a new listener, welcome to the best podcast radio station on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you're listening to this. This is the best information you will get. Top-notch information here. And again, I'm your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, alongside my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian. Big guy, what are you you're in a food coma?
No, I'm not yet, man. I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner, so I'm not in the coma yet. I'm sure I will be in, probably at this point, less than 12 hours. I'll be comatose.
Well, yeah, you'll be by my house at this time. So, yeah, my in-laws are going to... my mother-in-law specific is going to force a lot of dessert down your throat, so
yeah,
be ready.
She likes to take advantage of me.
Pete comes over, and then all of a sudden he has a full plate of food.
Yeah, probably
That's how it is an Italian household, man.
Within about 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Less
so
than
be
2
ready,
minutes.
man. You better not be. Are you counting macros tomorrow?
Nah. Probably, I mean, I haven't, to be honest with you, and I actually made a post about this on Instagram. In the last probably about 2 or 3 months now, my counting is pretty much at a... I guess you could say it's not intuitive eating, but I'm at the point now where I know I could stay within my range and not go over. So I don't actually count down to the gram right now because I am pretty much in a maintenance phase. So tomorrow's not going to be any different.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we put out that podcast about it already, but I think you kind of know when you're overdoing it and when you're not, if you listen to your body.
Yeah, especially when you get deep into the off season, you're at your body fat set point, your calories are at a high level. I mean, at this point, my calories, I'd have to force feed myself. I'd have to, purposely consume more to gain weight. So I'm actually not going to gain any additional weight by accident at this point. So that's a good thing, especially around the holidays. I
just hate when people say, oh, yeah, I'm listening to my body, and they're using it as an excuse. Yeah. I hate that. That's why I hate saying it, but it's so true. When you get to a certain point, you really know what you're talking about and know what you're doing. You can listen to your body, but a lot of people just use that as an excuse. Yeah, I'm listening to my body. It's like, well, like you said, you're doing it now and you're deep into the off season. Right. So it's not like you're, coming off of a contest or coming off of a dieting cycle.
Yeah, there's a time and place for listening to your body, and it's not right after a competition or a diet. Because if I listen to my body, and I have done this before, I've listened to my body the day after a competition, and I've pretty much ruined it.
Yeah, exactly.
In one day. So don't always listen to your body. You have to know, okay, this is the time to listen to it.
Oh, man, you know what I should have looked up? And, talking about, we're going to shift gears into our trending topic for today. But I should have looked up and see if there was any Black Friday things going on now. Like, I'm sure there was some mall people running each other over TV. Does that happen anymore? I feel like it's not as big as it used to be.
Well, not too long ago. I think it was maybe, what was it? Maybe, I don't know at this point, maybe it was like 5 years ago that the guy got trampled at the Walmart.
Was it the one in Long Island that he got trampled at?
Yeah, that was the one right by me. It was in my town.
Well, you got some savages that live near you, man.
Yeah, it's just a breeding ground for it, I guess. I'm a product of my environment. What can I say?
Yeah, so I don't know. So speaking of Black Friday, we got to talk about a Black Friday sale. We're horrible salesmen. We forgot to mention it.
It's funny because, it's been going on and we didn't even talk about it.
Yeah, it's on now. So again, guys, head on over to NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. You can pick up 50% off coaching, which is an insane deal. And every time I say that, I'm like, my God, we're crazy.
Yeah, 50% is a big discount. I mean, it's already at a decent price, so another, half off on it. I don't know what other incentive we could give you guys at that point.
Yeah, but again, like we feel like this is our way of giving back.
Yeah.
And also, Black Friday special on Caffeine. Pick up a Pick up a tub of Caffeine, get free shipping, and a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code. So if you're thinking about picking it up, pick it up, and you'll get the Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code and Caffeine, the best protein coffee, which is really good. And I'm not just saying that because I invented it, but it's really, really good. If you guys go back and listen to what episode was that when you were wired on it, and you could see the transition. What episode was that? What were we talking
I'm not
about?
sure. That was a couple episodes back. Yeah.
Yo, it's so funny when we're on the opposite end of it, like we're talking about it. All of them blend in. Every podcast seems to blend in.
Yeah, they all tie into each other, which is, I guess it's good. It's good, but then when we have to go back and pick the number out, we get lost in the shuffle. But they all tie in one way or the other. And the funny thing about that episode was that wasn't even the one we were talking about the benefits of caffeine, and you indirectly saw caffeine working.
Yeah.
So that was not a plug for the supplement or anything by any means. I was literally just needed some caffeine and needed a good pick me up, and you guys see how it works.
Yeah, it was just funny how it worked out. I'm sure the people in London who run down the streets are really pissed off about that episode. Like, don't ever give Pete caffeine during a podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, man. When you give me a little caffeine and I have no sleep, I turn into a different person.
All right, guys. So the trending topic for today, I found a really, really cool study. I'm not going to give any of it away, but we have Matt Gary coming on today to talk about maxing out. But the trending topic kind of related to that. So we let Matt Gary kind of take the reins on the trending topic. So we're going to come back to the trending topic after the commercial break. So stay tuned for that because that's going to be a good one. Let's move on to the listener question of the day, man. You ready for today's question? This is a cool one.
Yep, let's do it.
Guys, if you have a question and you want us to answer, you could submit it on our website, NewYorkMuscleRadio.com/listener question. Clear my throat here. So the question is, he's a listener from Vancouver, BC, Canada. What's BC? Oh, British Columbia? Is that what that means?
Yep.
I know that. Vancouver, BC, Canada. Found your podcast through iTunes and been enjoying it ever since. It's great stuff, guys. Keep it up. Question. I'm finding that on shoulder, bench press, and tricep movements, I have an increasing imbalance on my left side. My bar path is always different on my left side than my right. So although I can easily lift a larger weight, my form gets sloppy. What would you recommend to address and fix weak points and form issues that are only on one side? Brad Folk.
That could be a number of things, causing the issue. If you don't have to train specifically with a barbell, using some dumbbells is definitely a good idea because if you do have an imbalance, it'll definitely expose it, and you'll strengthen it by working each side individually. So that's one thing you could definitely do, but you have to figure out what the issue is. I mean, if it's just a weakness on one side and you can correct it by getting stronger equally on both sides, and that would be the thing to do. You never know. It could be tightness. It could be some type of minor injury, but you have to, assess what the actual issue is.
Yeah, I think you gave him good advice as far as focusing on not using a barbell and using dumbbells for a while, because I think that'll definitely help bring both sides up. Don't do what other people recommend. And I know I've heard this so many times, and I'm sure you have too. Just do dumbbells on one side. You'll fix it. It's like, no, don't do that. And don't load weight on one side more than the other. It'll balance itself out. Just keep focusing on getting stronger. Focus also on your form, because sometimes your form, you don't even realize that you may be pushing a little bit, leaning a little more to the right, pushing a little more with the right, and then may throw the left off, or vice versa. Maybe you're pulling your left shoulder blade down a little farther than the right shoulder, and that's what's causing the imbalance also. Could even be the ground, man. You'd be surprised on what causes some things. Maybe the gym floor is not level.
Yeah,
I mean, it really could be anything.
Could be, and like I said, it could be an issue not even related to strength, although that could be very well what it is. And some people just happen to be more dominant on one side of their body as far as how they move. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I actually used to play roller hockey. And I actually remember
every time we record a podcast, I find out more and more about you. You played roller hockey?
I played roller hockey, and the funny thing was, I remember at one point
you were a pretty active kid for a fat kid.
Yeah, I was a fat active kid, man. That's proof right there, guys, that you could if you eat too much, man, the amount of calories you burn doesn't matter. You could overeat that, but
Wait, so hold on. Let's back this up a little bit. So you were a Taekwondo
wait,
master.
No, we'll get to this in a minute. Let me answer his question really quick.
Yes, Sensei.
I'm bowing. Just to finish
Too
that.
bad this is not a video podcast. I'd be bowing to you.
No,
Yes,
no.
sir.
I just let's finish
Wait,
it for him.
what do you say? Yes, sir. What do you say when you bow down your head?
Yeah,
What do they
that's probably right. But anyway, so we'll talk about hockey, roller hockey in a minute. But you know, the example I was using
what other
was
sports you played?
I did.
You ballet.
No, I did.
Gymnastics?
I did gymnastics too. Yeah,
You definitely did gymnastics.
All right, we'll talk about my life when we want to answer the question.
Go ahead, answer the question.
So I used to play roller hockey, and I noticed at one point, maybe after a year or so playing, that my roller blades, the right side, actually, the wheels on them, they actually all bent and curved, because the way I would actually roller skate was my right foot. I'd actually have it out in front of me, and I would lean on one side of my ankle. I wouldn't sit flat. So I've ever seen you've probably seen this too. Some people, when they wear shoes, heavy people, they might sink in on one side only.
Yeah.
Not because I'm not saying because they're heavy and they sink in their shoes, but I'm saying if their shoes do sink in, they sink in on one side, not equally all over. So a lot of times people have issues with just the way they move, with the way they walk. So it wouldn't be odd if one side of your body you use more than the other, and that's why you're finding that you travel with one side, further or ahead when you're doing like a bench press.
I don't think his issue is really anything. I mean, I don't know, so don't quote me on that. But I don't think it's anything injury related. I think he sounds like more of a beginner, and I really think that in the beginning you're definitely more. If you're right-handed, you're definitely going to be right side dominant. So honestly, what I recommend and what really fixes it fast is to get a better connection to that left side. This may sound a little bro sciencey and weird, but it actually does work. Try doing things with the left side. Try brushing your teeth with the left side. Did you ever try brushing your teeth with the opposite hand?
Yeah, it's very hard.
It's very hard. But you develop once you get past like how hard it is and you keep doing it, you develop a better connection with that left side, so you'll be able to do more things with the left.
It's a good tip. Yeah.
Like, do you ever play? What the hell is that called? When you switch hands. Well, there's a word for it. When you masturbate and you switch hands, the hell's that called?
Hey, I don't know, man.
No, come on. There's something for it.
I don't know. What do you know? You know about this?
It's a saying, man. When you switch hands. I forget. I don't remember.
I have no idea, man. I didn't know. I didn't know I should know that.
I don't know why I know that, but
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm telling you, it's a thing though. It has a name when you switch hands. Switch hitter?
No,
I don't know.
Actually,
I don't know. Well, anyway, whatever. But start using your left hand for a lot more, and you'll start to notice that whole just getting a better connection to that side. And if you ever tried to write with your left hand, if you're right-handed, it looks insane. I look like a 5-year-old when I write with my left.
Yeah. Well, I look like a 5-year-old when I write with my right anyway, so I guess it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so wait. So what other sports did you play? So you were a fat gymnast,
Yeah.
a fat roller hockey player. What else?
I played football. I played baseball. I played basketball. That's probably it. I don't think I played any other sports.
Were you good?
Competitively? Out of all those sports, I'd say I was probably equally good in basketball and football.
What position did you play in football?
What do you think I was actually?
I think you told me. I think
I think
defense. You were on the defense.
I was a defensive. I played as a guard and then a tackle, but I'd say I spent most of my time playing as a guard.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You have to pull up those pictures, man. I'd love to see. You should post up one of those pictures and do like what everyone does on Instagram, like Throwback Thursday, and it's like you as a kid.
Yeah.
Fat, and then you now flexing.
Yeah, I mean, I have some fat kid flexing pictures if you want those.
Do you really?
Oh yeah.
Wait, are you going to your mom's house for Thanksgiving?
She's coming over mine, so I'll have her. I'll tell her to bring the photo album. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure our listeners want to see Fat Pete Kacharian.
Yep, Fat Pete.
Not Big Pete.
Not Big Pete. Fat Pete. Yeah, there was an era of Big Fat Pete.
Yeah, I was skinny Anthony. I was a stick, man. As a kid growing up, I was tall, lanky, and all I did was play anything. I was basketball. I was mostly into basketball, but that's a lot of cardio.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was never, even though I played all those sports, I was actually never in really good physical shape as far as conditioning until, I mean, obviously if I was carrying a little extra weight, my conditioning wouldn't be great anyway, but I played all those sports and my conditioning still wasn't great. Oh, that was the other one, soccer. And I'll tell you a funny story about soccer since I'm the butt of the joke on this episode today, so we'll roll with that.
I'm not making fun of you. I'm not making fun of you because you're fat. You're not fat anymore.
Because I was fat. Whatever. It's okay. I'm making fun of it too. But it's a funny story, and actually, my mom will tell this better than me. But since she's not here, I'll speak for her. I played. That was probably one of the sports I played earlier. She put me in that when I was a kid, and we used to. I guess at that age, when you have soccer, you know, at the half point of the game, you would take like a snack break or something like that. Like, you know, like the game would go, like you'd play half the game, then you'd rest, and they'd have like fruits and snacks and waters, and then you'd play the second half. Like that's how we did it, or something like that.
Halftime.
Yeah, but like the halftime break, yeah, it would be a snack break. Like that's how they did it. It was like a mandatory snack break. So we had the mandatory snack break, and my mom told me, she said that she had to force me to go play the game because I told her I didn't want to go back in. I wanted to sit and eat. So, you know, that kind of ended my soccer career at that point.
Wait, how old were you when you played all these sports?
Well, soccer I played when I was really young. Like, I don't even remember how old I was. I don't remember that story. She told me that, so I was probably like, I couldn't have been any older than 5 at that point.
You were like 15?
Yeah. But I played football and basketball until I was about 15. So,
fun fact, I was on a rowing team.
Yeah, I know that, actually. You never really spoke much about it, but you mentioned that to me.
Yeah, that's a lot of cardio, too. I hated it.
Yeah?
I really did. I hated it because it was counterproductive to getting big, and I hated it. I just like the fact that it was cool. It was something different. Like, you're on the water, you're rowing. It was cool, but it was like, eh.
Yeah.
It was a team sport, so it's like, eh. I like basketball a lot, but then when I got to high school, I realized that wasn't NBA material, so I kind of not gave that up, but then I picked up weightlifting, and I was like, eh. This may be. I really wish, though, I got into powerlifting as a youngin.
Yeah, me too, man.
I really do. I really wish I would have.
It's funny because at that age when I started working out, like I said, I was coming from that background of just being heavier and overweight. That was like the last thing I cared about. I actually just wanted to get skinny, and you know, I didn't care if I was weak, strong, whatever. I just wanted my body fat percentage to be lower, and whatever it took. You know, so like I said, I was playing football up until that point. And, you know, like I said, I was playing, you know, I was a lineman. So losing weight was definitely not optimal. So I said, you know what, screw football, screw basketball. I'm just going to start working out. And that's how I made my transition. But in the beginning, it wasn't anything involved with, you know, building muscle or powerlifting. I just wanted to just get in better shape overall.
And guys, this was Inside the Life of Pete Kacharian on New York Muscle Radio podcast. That's what it ended up being.
Yeah, I feel like I'm visiting my therapist office, and I'm laying down in the chair right now. Although I don't have a therapist, but if I did, I could imagine it. I can imagine that's what it's like. Except for I didn't cry on the episode today, so we didn't get that far.
Not yet, man. You may cry when you find out what Matt Gary has to tell you about maxing out.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like Matt Gary. He's a really, really good guy. I'm so glad he came back on. Just really genuinely nice person. You know, and there's so many people in this world, and some people are just not nice, and it's always nice when you come across genuinely nice people, you know? Yeah, him and Susie are just great.
Yeah, well, both of them. Yeah, they're very genuine and very passionate about what they do, and you could tell. You know, they work with some of the top athletes in the sport, and you could tell they just love helping people. And you know, that's the great thing about powerlifting that you definitely see a lot of. It's a lot of people just willing to help each other, and everybody wanting to see everyone else do well as well. So, you know, he's a really great guest too. The last podcast we had him on. We had so many people contact us and tell us that the stuff they heard about what he brought to the table for deadlifting was stuff that they just never heard before, you know?
You know, I'm excited for this one today because I know a lot of people out there. And I really, not that I want to gear this episode to the average gym bro, but I know so many people, you know, come into the gym. I'm doing 4 plates today on squats. 4. Yeah. And then they throw 4 plates out and do quarter reps and never get anywhere, you know? And it just, I don't know. Because I've seen it so many times before. I've spoken to people, and it's like, yeah, I go into the gym, I'm not getting stronger. It's like, well, what are you doing? Yeah, well, I tried to go through, you know, do this on bench today, and it didn't work. It's like, well, you didn't do anything to train for that, you know? Yeah. So it's like kind of frustrating when I hear that stuff. So it's like, that'd be a good topic for a discussion on a podcast.
Yeah. And it's funny, too, because then you have people on the opposite end of the spectrum that never go for 1 rep maxes or never actually attempt to test their strength. So they don't know where they stand, and you don't know if their program's working or they don't know if they're making progress. And it's funny, I've been guilty of that myself, not recently, but it's funny because you remember the first time we ever trained together, you made me max out in the gym. on bench. I think we were benching and I was working with like 275 or something. And you're like, did you ever go for 315? And I'm like, no, I never actually attempted over 275 in my life. I just never felt like it. You're like, no? Like, why? I'm like,
I thought it was very odd.
I know. It's like, honestly,
Must
I was
be the Taekwondo background.
Yeah, I was like, I'm fine with 275. I wasn't powerlifting, so I'm like, what does it matter what my 1 rep max is? And you're like, just put 3 plates on. So you made me max out. I got the 3 plates, but it's funny because I never even attempted to max out in the gym.
I don't understand how you never wanted to, though.
I told you, man, at that time, I mean, I hit 225 when I was like maybe 17 years old or 18, something like that. And since then, I never cared about hitting, like, that was like a milestone for me on the bench, and I never really cared to go beyond that. So when I was repping like 275, I didn't really care if it was 275 or it was 3 plates or if it was 405. I really didn't care, to be honest with you. I mean, now it's a little bit different because I have to train with you all the time and see the weight you put up, and I got to try and keep up.
Yeah. And also, another thing, too, which is why it's cool having Matt Gary on this, because this episode is going to talk for the powerlifters, too, because I know when let's say you're a new powerlifter and you're interested in competing, it's very hard to pick what your attempts are. So many people overthink their 1 rep max, overthink it like crazy. I know guys, I've seen them in the gym touch and go 315. They're like, yeah, I could do 315 at a meet. Yeah. It's like, yeah, good luck, buddy.
Completely different.
Yeah, completely different. So, yeah. All right, let's take this short commercial break, and we'll be right back with Matt Gary and Maxing Out.
What's up, New York Muscle Radio listeners? It's your co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and I'm glad you're all listening. Put down that tilapia and asparagus. Learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner eating what you want. Pick up a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. But for now, let's get to the show.
Nice, Pete.
What?
I saw you checking out that girl's butt.
What? I was just checking out her yoga pants.
Pete.
I was thinking you'd look really good in yoga pants.
Uh-huh.
I was like trying to check out what brand it was. Like I was looking at her form on deadlifts. They were all messed up.
Do you think she has a nicer butt than me?
Well, it definitely doesn't look like a pancake.
Did you just call my butt a pancake?
Well, I mean...
What can I do?
You gotta try New York Muscle Radio's Glutylicious program.
Glutylicious?
Yeah, you'll finally get a celebrity booty, like all the other girls following the program.
Fine, I'll do it, but don't get jealous when other guys check out my glutylicious ass.
Glutylicious, your guide to getting a celebrity booty in 12 weeks. Now available exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
Want anything special for your birthday?
Just a decent cup of coffee.
You're kidding.
I'm serious. Honey, your coffee's undrinkable.
It's pretty harsh.
Well, so's your coffee. The girls down at the office make better coffee on their hot plates.
And he didn't even kiss me goodbye. If I could just make a decent cup of coffee, I could relax.
So relax. Why don't you try Coffeen from BuyProteinCoffee.com? Tastes good as fresh perked.
Good as fresh perked.
And it has protein. 10 grams per scoop.
I'll surprise Harvey for his birthday tonight.
Hey, great coffee.
Doesn't it taste good as fresh perked?
Better.
Better than those girls make at the office?
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours.
Coffeen, the world's only instant coffee that's fortified with muscle-building protein. Visit BuyProteinCoffee.com now.
Hey guys, it's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, and I just wanted to announce that my brand new personal training facility is now open. I'm currently taking on new clients in the Long Island, New York area. If you're interested in working with the best personal trainer in the business, head on over to abfitnesstrainer.com and sign up for your free consultation. Then you can understand why bodybuilding.com has named me Personal Trainer of the Month.
All right, guys, we're back. New York Muscle Radio, episode number 137, a gym rat's guide to maxing out with Matt Gary. All right, guys, we had Matt on the podcast previously, so we're inviting him back today. Matt is the USAPL Coach of the Universe, powerlifting coach. He's going to teach us how to properly max out today. So I know what you guys are thinking right now. What do you mean properly max out? I just put the weight in the bar and I go for it. Well, let me tell you, That may be true to an extent, but it wasn't until I started powerlifting that I actually learned you can make a lot more progress being smart about going for a 1-rep max, rather than just going balls to the wall on your first attempt. So Matt is going to give us all the right advices today. Matt, welcome back to New York Muscle Radio Podcast. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Happy Thanksgiving, gentlemen.
Yes. Well, Thanksgiving's tomorrow for us recording this, but everyone's going to listen to this on Friday. So
That's right.
What's your plans for Thanksgiving so far?
Susie and I will just share the day together because most of our family is out of state. But yeah, it'll just be a nice day for the two of us to kind of cook together and cozy up to some good food and some football.
Awesome. I know there's a lot of good games on tomorrow. What's your I've been asking all my clients this, so I'm just curious what your answer is. What's your favorite Thanksgiving food? What's one of the things you look for?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I listened to your Thanksgiving podcast earlier today. So I'm definitely on the gravy train because I love gravy on my turkey, and I know you guys don't. Pete said he likes his meats dry. So I'm a big fan of turkey. I love the stuffing, sweet potatoes, I guess cranberry sauce, and I'm a big fan of pecan pie. So
oh yeah, man, nice.
Yeah. So, I don't really discriminate. I don't know that there's two that I don't like. But like you guys said, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily YOLO. I'm going to, keep it
controlled.
Yeah, keep it controlled.
That's good. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, it's funny. 9 out of the 10 people that I've asked that question to, everybody was like the stuffing. I'm like, really? Stuffing?
Yeah, it's so good, man. And like you said, you can make it in so many ways. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna kind of back up a little bit. So normally we do this in our intro, which is our trending topics. But today's trending topic I'm excited for. We have you on. It's like perfect timing, and I usually tie these in well together. So today's trending topic is I picked this up from Jeremy Lineker. Now, most of you who don't know Jeremy Lineker, Matt, you know who he is, right?
I do. We've never met in person, but I know pretty well of him. Yeah.
He's basically a researcher for muscle and strength and all that stuff. So he put out a study, so I'll just read what he wrote. New study from our group showing that doing a 1-rep max was all you needed to do to improve your 1-rep max. We chose a simple model to limit the skill aspect and showed that people doing daily 1-rep maxes followed by additional exercise volume are likely getting nothing from the added exercise volume or muscle size with respect to strength. Say what you have to say about muscle growth in trained people for strength. Here it did not augment strength. Say what you say about doing more exercise volume. Here it did not augment strength. Say what you say about having greater potential to increase strength. Here it did nothing. Say what you say about having greater practice with the movement. Here it did nothing. For strength, specificity is king, not muscle growth, and certainly not exercise volume. So then he quoted the actual article, and it says, our results suggested that the specificity of an exercise as opposed to exercise volume or muscle growth are responsible for the magnitude of training-induced increases in 1-rep max strength. Additionally, the performance of familiarization sessions to eliminate the learning effect associated with the 1-rep max testing is likely inappropriate. Therefore, individuals looking to increase 1-rep max strength should focus on the principles of specificity by practicing the 1-rep max test, and strength improvements are unlikely to be augmented by additional exercise volume. Whew, I need a breath after that one. So Pete, what's your take on this? We talked about this a little bit prior to recording.
Yeah, basically what I understand from how he described it and what you said was that if your goal is to increase your 1-rep max, then anything additional beyond just training with a daily 1-rep max will not increase your 1-rep max. So you're basically, if that's your main focus, then all you should be doing if you want to improve your 1-rep max is specifically do that, train with a 1-rep max or train with a daily max. That's what I gathered from that. I can't say I agree with everything that he said, but from what he said, that's what I gathered from it.
What do you think, Matt? This is why I was excited to have you answer this question here.
I definitely agree with Dr. Lineker in terms of the principle of specificity. I mean, for those of you that understand the jargon, it's the SAID principle, which is specific adaptation to impose demands. So clearly, if you want to get good at a 1-rep max, you have to practice doing 1 rep maxes. Doubles, triples, sets of 5, that stuff is not going to cut it. I clearly don't have his research nor his document in front of me, so I don't know. I don't want to, misquote anything that he said or say anything inappropriate. I guess the questions that I would have is, if you understand anything about the general adaptation syndrome and, the stage of resistance and your response to exercise and your response to training, ultimately, if you continue to, like, for instance, I presume from the article that he was recommending maxing out every time you go in the gym. Is that what he was saying?
I think a daily max.
Yeah.
I clicked the article, but I don't have access to the whole thing, so I couldn't read the full thing. Basically, like, working up to a daily max for the day and then calling it quits after that. He posted up a video not too long. I don't know how long ago it was. He was deadlifting like 600 plus pounds, and he attributed all those results to just going to the gym, working up to a daily 1 rep max, and then doing some back off work, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, I would buy that. I definitely know people that have done that. It's just, I think it becomes a question of your exercise tolerance, your recovery ability to that high, because that's, essentially maximum intensity. Now, granted, the volume is really low. So I just think it would be an issue of would the trainee be able to recover from that? Would that be sustainable long term? It's all about sustainability.
And that was actually also done in a 3-week study. That's
Okay.
I do know that about it. So I was curious too how that would work long term.
Yeah, I think sustainability is the ultimate question. But in terms of specificity, I mean, he's absolutely right. If you want to get good at maxing out, you got to max out, period. So
yeah, and you had given me the advice of going for, and we had you on the podcast to talk about deadlifting and using singles only. And I think that obviously that has worked well for me and anybody else who you've recommended it to. But why can't you do that? I guess based on this, why can't you do that for a squat or a bench press then? You
mean in terms of the singles?
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, you certainly could, but I think the specific reason, the discussion that we had last time, in terms of specificity for the deadlift, is because when you max out in the deadlift, you never lower the bar first, so you're not incorporating the stretch reflex. So because you're devoid of the stretch reflex or using any momentum, we use singles in the deadlift. But you can use multiple repetitions to build your squat and your bench press because you always lower it first. So if we were going to test your squat from, like, let's say a pin squat or a bottom squat, where we were going to rest the bar in the rack and put it on the pins, and you were going to position yourself under the bar and squat it up like that, then singles would be appropriate. But because you actually walk out the weight and sit down, thereby using stored elastic energy, utilizing the stretch reflex, utilizing an eccentric component followed by a concentric component, it's therefore more appropriate to do multiple repetitions. And again, you could do singles, but it would just essentially take you a much longer time, specifically with the squat and the bench, because you literally have to get up underneath the bar, walk it out, you have to unrack it. And same with the bench, you have to unrack the weight. Whereas in the deadlift, the bar is always on the floor. So you can just, as you and I talked about economy of time, just doing singles in the deadlift is probably equated to doing multiple rep sets when you really break down the rest periods and so forth.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I was just curious what you thought about that, because I just came across it and I was like, it's kind of fitting for today. And it's just a different view on it, I guess. There's so many different ways to skin a cat.
Amen.
I want to, just before we transition, I wanted to ask a question really quick too, because the one thing he said in there was that basically additional muscle mass through increasing the volume of training didn't do anything to help. And that's one of those things where, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of studies that actually will, counter that and show that increased muscle mass will help. But I feel like, at least for myself and anybody else that I know that I've worked with, anytime I have increased my muscle mass, or anybody else that I know has, that always has some translation into increasing my strength. So that was the one thing that I didn't necessarily agree with from that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to clearly, I kind of side with you there, Pete. I mean, I would have to talk to him as well and kind of get a clarification on that, because I think really, ultimately, in order to lift more weight, you have to produce more force. And there's two ways to produce force. One is of course, having more muscle mass behind that. So you can gain muscle, which is going to increase your capacity and your ability to produce force. And then the second one is simply is neuromuscular, and that's becoming more skilled at the movement. So we always talk about strength being a skill. And of course, as lend credence to his argument and his point, strength is so specific that the gains that he's talking about are clearly, neuromuscular, becoming more efficient and becoming more skilled since he's only doing singles. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, adding more muscle mass, through volume and through repetition would clearly, in my opinion, increase the capacity and your ability to produce force. So, I mean, I think it begs some clarification from him. I'm certainly not, crapping on his study. I mean, his research.
No, I mean, I like I said, I couldn't pull up the whole article, and you're just hearing about this, I'm sure, for the first time now. So, I mean, I just posted it, so it's not like you had any time to prior plan to this to really look this out. But
sure, I think if I can mention one thing that's of note, a good friend of mine who's a professor at Florida Atlantic University, Dr. Michael Zordos, is friends with. You know him, right?
Yeah, he's coming on next week. Actually, I finally booked an appointment with him on. Finally,
he's hard to nail down. Well, you can ask him some of these questions because I think that would be right in his wheelhouse. But I know that he published a study, and I'm not sure that I think Eric Helms might have been a part of it. Justin Quiles, a couple of those guys. I'm not sure if Dr. Lenicky was a part of it, but he did a study that talked about volume in terms of the repetitions per set in producing muscular hypertrophy. And so, the typical bro science is that if you want to get bigger, you need to use lighter weight and more repetitions. And ultimately, what Dr. Zordos proved through his study is in the end of the day, it's ultimately about volume. So if you're going to do 5 sets of 5, that's fine. But guess what? You can do 25 singles or 12 doubles or, 6 sets of 4 or 8 sets of 3 or whatever your combination is and pretty much arrive at the same results. So in the end, it's ultimately about volume. Now, again, that's just for hypertrophy and muscle mass. So I think he'd be a good guy to ask that question too as well.
Yeah, definitely. So when we have him on, we have to come back to this, Pete.
Yeah. For sure.
All right, let's talk. We're talking a little sciencey here. Let's talk to the gym bro, the guy that's like, yeah, bro, today I'm going to the gym. I'm benching. I'm throwing 3 plates on the bar, 3, and I'm benching today. So, Matt, let's talk about it. So, first off, for those who may not know, what is an actual one rep max test, and why is it important for someone to know what their 1 rep max is?
Well, I think in the beginning, when people start training, I mean, clearly for most of us, most of us who are listening to this podcast, we want to look better naked. I mean, that's pretty much, who doesn't want to look better? Everybody's got some vanity, and everybody clearly wants to get stronger. And so I think, at the end of the day, the most clearly expressed, if you will, definition of strength is the 1 rep max. It's the single repetition. It's how much force can you produce and deliver into that barbell for a single repetition. Very few people are interested in what you can do 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, 20, whatever. And so a clear definition of strength with the barbell is the 1 rep max. And so I think there's value in obtaining that after you've been training for a while. I certainly wouldn't recommend that for a novice because a novice, in the beginning, they just need to focus on getting better at the lifts and accruing more volume and skill and so forth. And their gains are going to be so linear in the beginning anyway. It's like learning to ride a bike, right? So if you teach somebody to ride a bike in the first week and, maybe they have training wheels on, but then the next week you take the training wheels off and so on and so forth, and they're getting more coordinated. So their gains in the beginning are strictly proprioceptive and neuromuscular. So if you test their 1 rep max on day 1, which again is entirely inappropriate, but let's say you had a new client and you tested their bench and they could bench press 100 pounds. Well, guess what? Next week, when you come back to the bench, they're probably going to bench 105, 110. And the week after, they're going to be able to do 115, 120. And it's not magic. It's just that they've gotten more skilled at the movement, but for intermediate and more advanced trainees who have been doing this for a while, they clearly, have developed some skill. And And then having that 1 rep max is nice because then you can program based off of percentages, based off of RPE, et cetera. And it gives you that concrete, tangible number of knowing kind of where you stack up against, your peers in terms of height and weight and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first started working out in general, it was just like, I'm going to go to the gym today, I'm going to see what I could do. I had no idea about anything with percentages or anything like that. So I know I definitely made those mistakes. I'm sure my co-host has made those mistakes. I'm even sure you probably have made those mistakes when you first started lifting.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
And just the world of powerlifting in general has changed so much in the past 5 years. I remember when specifically when I was in off-season bodybuilding, I said, I'm going to get strong. I'm going to do a powerlifting routine. I remember Googling like a powerlifting workout, powerlifting routine, and just finding linear progression, and that was it. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. I'm just going to plug a number in and see where it goes. But it's just so funny how things have evolved, So now it's like I kind of want to talk to those people who first start coming to the gym, and they're just like, keep trying to max out. You're not going to get anywhere doing that,
Exactly.
So now going back to someone who's not a powerlifter, instead of forcing a 1 rep max, can they do a 5 or a 3 rep max instead as a gauge for strength?
I think they can, but again, back to Dr. Lenike's point, strength is specific. I mean, and so that's why it's, we have this event called the World's Strongest Man in Strongman, right? And so it's impossible for us to quantify who's the strongest female on the planet and who's the strongest male, because strength is expressed across such a broad continuum, right? You've got the guy who can lift the largest stone, the largest Atlas stone. You've got the person who can flip the heaviest tire. You've got the person with the heaviest squat, so strength is expressed across such a broad continuum. So using the rep calculators, there's slight accuracy in using those rep max calculators for the squat and bench press, but not so much in the deadlift. And you run the risk with the higher repetitions per set, the less accurate they become. So really, I think if you're going to use a rep max calculator to kind of predict your 1 rep max, or kind of hypothetically predict it, if you will, you really need to be focusing on sets that are 5 reps or fewer. There's a perfect example of that. We used to have a guy at our gym who gained a lot of internet fame by doing this really, really high repetition squats with no belt on. And his form was just absolutely gorgeous, was perfect. Anyway, to make a long story short, he did a 474, because I remember it was in kilos. So 475 squat, let's say, and he wound up doing 18 repetitions with it. I mean, that's like just mind-blowing. So when you use that rep calculator.
What's that in pounds? Really quick.
So, 474 was 475. So when you put it in the rep calculator for like 18 reps, he was hypothetically supposed to be able to squat like 755 pounds. But in reality, his best 1RM was about 655. So it was 100 pounds less. And so obviously that's a huge drop off. The point is that some people are really, really good at doing high rep sets or triples or 5s, etc., while some people are really good at doing singles. So again, we're getting back to that argument of specificity. In the beginning, if you've never done singles, then an appropriate, method or pathway, if you will, would be to start kind of ramping up your training. And maybe you're doing those 5s, and you could do, maybe a month of 5s and then kind of transition to, 4s or 3s and do some 3s and then do some doubles and so on and so forth. And then, start going into singles. But if you just kind of go into the gym and you're used to doing 5s and you throw a 1 rep max on the bar, that bar is going to behave differently. Your approach to that is different. I mean, we all know that if when you get up under a set and you know that you have to do 5 reps, you approach it differently than you approach a single. Because, no matter who you are, you're going to pace yourself because man, I got to do 5 of these. But when you have to do 1, you are going to be much more forceful. I mean, literally forceful, because you're going to recruit and deliver more force into that barbell because you don't have to pace yourself. So I think it really goes back to specificity. If people are fearful of doing a 1 rep max and they kind of want to use those calculators, then they can. But just know that, just because you can triple, let's say, 250 pounds, when we put that into a rep calculator, it says hypothetically that you should be able to do 275. But just because you can triple 250 doesn't mean that you're going to be a 275 bencher. So it's, it might put you in the ballpark. It might put you in the vicinity. For some people, look, if 250 for a triple is your best, you might be able to hit that 275 for one. But I know with me, I actually get better as the weight goes up. So I get better doing singles.
Yeah, you mentioned something actually that brings up an interesting point too, because you mentioned specificity and training the lift. If you're training with a 1 rep max, how you're going to lift it, comparing it to something that may be like a 5 rep max. You're going to lift the 1 rep max. You're going to put a lot more force into it, obviously. And I've heard this, and I've heard a few different opinions on this. As far as let's say you don't always train with a 1 rep max, but you do want to improve your 1 rep max. Training with, let's say, your 5 rep max or your anything even above that, but lifting it with the same force that you might be applying to a 1 rep max. Like, let's say your 1 rep max is 405, and you might only have 315 or 375 on the bar, but applying 405 pounds of force to it, as if you're lifting a 1 rep max. Does that have a significant amount of carryover to your 1 rep max if you're not training the 1 rep max specifically?
I don't think it does. I definitely buy into that, because I think this kind of goes back to creating a process and treating strength like it's a skill. And you need to create a concise and repeatable routine when you approach these lifts. And so really, in essence, your execution should be identical. So we're just kind of talking, in the context of this conversation, for most people, we're probably talking about your squat, your bench, your deadlift, your overhead press, those types of lifts. And I do know that you want to try to deliver maximum force into the barbell with every single repetition. But the reality is that when you're doing a set of 5 or when you're doing a triple, it's the human condition and the human behavior to kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit. You just have this inherent built-in regulator that says, man, I got to do 5 of these. You know what I mean? So if I just kind of bring the noise on this first one, I'm not going to have anything left for the 5th one. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's I'm with you. In theory, you do want to try to apply maximum force, but it's just the body does weird things knowing when it has to pace itself. And I don't think, there's not going to be a carryover, because again, if you've got 375 on the bar, to your point, and you said you try to deliver 405 pounds of force into that barbell, it's different than when you actually have 405 pounds on the bar. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
You just wind up recruiting more of those muscles and kind of igniting the nervous system even more. So
now this is what I want to talk about, because a lot of people, like I said, you just kind of go in the gym. All right, I'm going to test and see what I could do today. So as we know that's not really the best idea. You should always kind of plan in when you're going to max out in your training, whether you say, all right, I'm going to take 3 months to get strong, and then the last week of my training, I'm going to test and see what I can do. So and this can go for powerlifters as well. So I want to kind of talk to the normal person in the gym, and I want to talk to powerlifters here. But how should you adjust your training prior to leading up to a new personal record in the gym?
So I think it goes to the point of, as you said, establishing first and foremost a date, a test date. So let's use a powerlifter first as an example. So clearly, the powerlifter finds a contest and a competition on the calendar, and they're going to schedule they're going to look at the calendar, and they're going to count backward, and they're going to schedule their training appropriately, for 8 to 12 weeks, more or less, probably leading up to that. And so they might have let's say they're organizing their training by months or by blocks. Maybe they've got a hypertrophy focus or a hypertrophy block, followed by a strength block, followed by a peaking or an intensity phase at the end, which kind of peaks their strength. So they've got concrete maxes or competition PRs from which to program. So they can literally base their training off of those maxes. They can use percents, they can use RPEs, they can use bar speed. They can use all those metrics to go ahead and build their training and use that as a roadmap. For your average gym rat who wants to test, they've got to just set a date and put it on the calendar. So, we're coming to the end of the year, and maybe the end of the year is an appropriate time to test because, it's the end of the year and they want to kind of find out, how did my, how strong am I in 2016 so that I can maybe go ahead and set appropriate goals for 2017. Now, I know we've only got maybe 5 weeks left, but again, you set your date on the calendar and just count backward. And so you want to give yourself ample time to ramp up. And so, I would recommend probably for somebody that's never tested a 1-rep max, I would say that they would want to give themselves a minimum of a month and probably better yet 6 weeks to kind of ramp up their training, and so if they've been doing more higher rep stuff, then clearly they want to start transitioning into rep ranges that are 5 and fewer. So when they can do that and start doing that incrementally from week to week, because they don't have a 1-rep max to base their training off of, they can just keep things pretty linear. So maybe they're doing 3 or 4 sets of 5, and maybe they do that for a couple weeks, going up 5 or 10 pounds per week. Then maybe they transition into, 4 sets of 4 or 5 sets of 3, where the volume is essentially equated, right? But because they're doing fewer repetitions, they can continue to make linear gains from week to week. And then again, transition to doubles. But you want to practice singles for a few weeks prior to just going in and testing your 1-rep max. You don't want that to be the first day that you've ever done singles before, because once again, as we said at the start, strength is specific. So that's pretty much how I would go about doing it.
Yeah, and one of the problems is a lot of people, and myself included in this, you kind of get eager to kind of test your 1-rep max and kind of see where you're at, because obviously, especially if you're a powerlifter, that's kind of always the numbers that you're kind of chasing. So how many times, I guess, in a year should we truly test for a 1-rep max? Because going back to the average person listening to this who's not a powerlifter, I mean, I know guys who go into the gym every week and want to max out.
Yeah, so I would say for your typical competitive powerlifter, I would say, who's been doing it for a little while, is probably competing about 3 times a year. So if you have roughly 52 weeks in a year and you divide that by 3, what do we get? Like 17 weeks roughly, or divided by 3? Yeah, like 17 weeks, So for someone who wanted to test their 1-rep max, they could probably do it 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year, and then break up their training accordingly, and kind of do it like that. It's just that I think as you said, people get so excited or so amped up to want to test their 1-rep max. And just remember, training is about building strength and not testing it every time, right? So one of the easiest ways to explain that to somebody is to take it to the extreme and use like a marathon runner as an example, right? Do you think a marathon runner is running a marathon 26.2 miles every time they train?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, of course not, right? They're not testing their marathon time every single time they train. So, they burn out. So clearly the same is true for 1-rep maxing, in that you want to give yourself time to build strength and then an appropriate pinpointed time on your calendar to test it. So I think between 3 and 4 times, probably 3 would kind of give this, would be a nice sweet spot, just because you can give yourself ample time to, perhaps experiment with new modalities in terms of, in the off season and that sort of thing. You can also, you can't forecast the future in terms of your schedule all the time with, holidays or just life events that might come up, weddings, trips, vacations, funerals, work trips, etc. And so if you've got 52 weeks in the year, the reality is for a lot of people, you may only have, 46 or 7 weeks to work with. So again, kind of breaking up your calendar or breaking up your year, if you will, into chunks, I think is appropriate. But it's important to put these dates on a calendar, and obviously that's going to be specific and germane to each person, but actually put them down instead of just saying, oh, I got a wild hair up my ass today, I'm going to go in and test. You know what I mean?
I think that's a good point. Not about the wild hair thing, but I think that's a good point that putting it down in the calendar, because I recently, since I'm telling you, powerlifting training has really changed my whole philosophy on training in general, and I think that powerlifters are way ahead of bodybuilders in terms of training, progression, and just making progress in the gym. And I kind of always knew that, but it wasn't until I actually started powerlifting that I actually see that. But putting it down on the calendar, you could really, really break down your training so specific. You can even break it down week by week, and that's how you could really make a lot of progress. And I think you mentioned it before, you're not going to make progress just testing every time you go into the gym. You're going to make the progress in between.
Of course. And to the point of like using the analogy of, like, do you want to have a pop quiz every single day, or do you want to have an exam, that you actually get to study for, a test that you actually get to prepare for? It's nice and it's encouraging to, like you said, put a date on the calendar, and now you're going to be, that you're going to hold yourself accountable in 12 weeks. You're putting that sucker on the calendar, and that come hell or high water, unless there's some life-changing event that happens, that's when you're going to test. And so it gives you something to look forward to, and it puts some meaning behind your training versus just going into the gym once a week and saying, oh, I'm going to test my bench press. And that's what the typical gym bro does, and that's why they don't see any progress.
Yep, and that's a great point. It actually does give your training a lot of meaning, a lot. That's like a really underestimated statement that you just made, because it really does put a whole different emphasis on how you train, and just having that number in the back. All right, I want to squat this in 12 weeks. Just having that number in the back of your mind while you're training and you're hitting certain milestones along the way to know that you're there. It's really gratifying along the way to see, and it makes training fun as opposed to bodybuilding training where you're just kind of, all right, I'm going to get a pump today. It's something totally different.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. It crystallizes everything for you.
Yeah. So you mentioned this a little earlier, and I want to go back to it. You mentioned the psychology of a 1-rep max. So I want to talk about that. So in all your experiences, powerlifting and coaching everybody, let's talk about the 1-rep max psychologically.
Yeah, I think that cannot be understated, and I think that first and foremost, just in whatever you endeavor to do in terms of your physical pursuits or even your business pursuits, it's imperative that people have a positive mindset and just an overall positive attitude. I mean, you can't, that just, people say, oh yeah, mindset is, it's 90% mental or whatever, and they just throw some random statistic out there. But it's true. It's more than just cliche that, your mind is like a box, and you have a choice in how you want to fill that box. And you can fill it with a bunch of negative crap and call yourself a loser and think my bench sucks and I'm not good at bench or I hate deadlifts or whatever. But that becomes, a physical manifestation if you continue to confess that and you continue to repeat that. So I think it starts with having a positive mindset, a positive mental approach. Obviously not all of life is sunshine and rainbows, but it's important that you affirm yourself, and even if you're not the best bench presser in the world, let's say you've got long arms and you're at a genetic disadvantage, if you're constantly telling yourself you're going to suck in the bench, then guess what? You're going to stink. So, telling yourself, just understanding that you're working hard and you're putting one foot in front of the other and you're making incremental progress and you're getting better, tell yourself that you're enjoying the bench press, that you're getting better at it, and focus on your skill and focus in on your process. And I think when we become process oriented rather than outcome and results driven, that's huge, because too often we get focused on the end result rather than the journey or the process to get us there. So we really emphasize when we coach lifters to, as I said earlier, to create a concise and repeatable process that goes into each lift. And so what I'm talking about is a pre-lift ritual or a pre-lift routine, so that you execute the lift the same way every single time. So you literally need to look like a robot. Just because you put additional weight on the bar doesn't mean that you lose your mind and you're bouncing off the walls. Clearly, as we add weight to the bar, our adrenaline is going to increase and we're going to get a little bit more amped up. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being able to do that while sticking to your routine. So I actually put a post about this on Instagram the other day, and it's, like somebody shooting the game-winning free throw. Are they going to change their routine for the game-winning free throw in a Game 7 of the NBA Finals? versus what they shot in the first quarter? Of course not. If they shot a free throw in the first quarter, they should approach it the exact same way so that it's a routine. And that helps to decrease your anxiety about the task that you're doing and allow you to focus in on that routine and then on that skill. So that's where I think visualization comes in really in a big way. And we really do espouse and preach a lot of pre-lift visualization, literally closing your eyes. And whether you're a music person or not, maybe you've got your headphones on and maybe it's some calming music, or maybe there's a particular song that kind of gets you jazzed up, but being able to close your eyes and literally create a short movie where you can watch yourself executing that lift perfectly with perfect form, excellent technique, and to the standard that you've set forth for yourself or the competition standard. And I think visualization is huge. And then, when you open your eyes, you're pretty much ready to do that. So I know a lot of very successful lifters, employ visualization and meditation techniques to help them, get closer to their goals and make that become a reality. So sorry if that was a long, overblown explanation, but
no, it wasn't. It was good because I think a lot of people screw themselves up mentally before they lift anyway. So that was good.
Yep.
And I'm sure you've seen it so many times, countless times probably with competitors on the platform.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's so many times when someone executes the first two lifts perfectly, and then we put a personal best or a record on the bar in their third attempt, and they go out and they change everything. They just approach it differently. The process changes, and they wind up getting in their own way mentally, and they have this mental block, and they don't execute the same way. And so, like I said, when you have that process that you can adhere to, it really helps you focus in, and it helps decrease that anxiety so that hey, look, I just got to go out there and execute these steps. And if I stick to my routine and I execute well, there's a really high probability that this lift is going to happen.
Exactly. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. And this is what all the powerlifters I know who downloaded this because they saw your name and they're like, oh, Matt's on. I want to know what he has to say about maxing out. So let's serve them their Thanksgiving dinner right now, Matt. So How do we properly warm up for a 1-rep max attempt? And I want to, because these obviously go hand in hand, let's talk about weight selection. So how do we know how much weight to put on the bar for our 3 attempts for each lift?
Okay, so I guess in this context, we're talking about powerlifters, right?
Yeah, and then you could touch on it because the average person going to the gym. Obviously we know the average person going to the gym wants to just, all right, let's throw 3 plates in the bar and see what I could do. But obviously that's not the way to go about it. So we could just digest it for both.
Okay, so yeah, and first, if you don't mind, let me touch upon that because I know you mentioned the whole 3-plate thing, and so I think one of the critical mistakes that people make when they're testing or when they're maxing out or even in competition is they get this number in their head or this milestone marker that they have to achieve, and there's nothing wrong with having that as a goal, but it's important. You hear that somebody say, oh, I just hit 275, now I've got to hit 300, or I'm all in for 3 plates. Well, it's like, look, take the incremental PR that's right in front of you, which is essentially the next 5 pounds. It's 280. It's 285. You have to lift those before you can get to 300 or 3 plates. So I think sometimes people really get so focused in on that next milestone number that they really miss out on some short and intermediate term strength gain, and they wind up grinding their gears because they constantly go for that big milestone PR, and it takes them years and years to get there because they haven't settled for the smaller incremental PR. So saying that, I'll kind of step back off my soapbox and kind of talk about the actual data and the actual digits. So if you don't mind, I'll just touch upon my data for just a moment. Yeah, so one of the things that I've done is I've collected data because I wanted to put some science and some real numbers behind this. And so I basically started collecting data, and I have a database of 97 competitions with over 13,000 lifters. So it's a significant size or chunk of data, if you will. And basically what I look at is I look at the bomb out rate in powerlifting competition. And for those who don't know, that means not hitting a successful lift or hitting one successful attempt out of 3 in any one discipline. So if you miss all 3 squats, or if you miss all 3 benches or deadlifts, you essentially bomb out of the competition. You don't register a total. And that's clearly the worst result. That's what we don't want to happen. So I look at the bomb out rates and where that occurs the most. I look at the rates of the missed opening attempts, the missed third attempts, et cetera. And I also look at the progressions between jumps, between attempts in terms of successful lifters and non-successful lifters. So I won't bore you with all of that data, but suffice it to say, what I've found is that for your opening attempt, essentially you want to start out at roughly about 91% of your max, or 91% of your competition PR, let's say. So that's pretty easy. You just pull out a calculator and you multiply your max by 0.91. And so for those of us who are talking in pounds, that's going to be, an easy number to determine, and you'll just round to the nearest 5-pound increment. For those competing in kilos, you would round that to the nearest kilo number. So again, your max times roughly 91%. Sometimes you can start a little lighter at about 90 to 92, but 91 seems to be the sweet spot. The second attempt, and that's usually a weight that you could probably hit for a triple. So for those who are approaching this from the gym mindset, or the gym bro who's never really taken a max, maybe you start out with whatever your best triple is, because that's probably going to be in that 90%-ish range anyway. And then your second attempt is usually right around 96%. It's somewhere between 95 and 97. I think the sweet spot for us is about 96.5. So we actually, again, take your max and multiply it by 0.965, and you come up essentially with your second attempt. And that's going to be a lock of an attempt. That's, again, it's heavy and it's challenging, but it's something that you can definitely get. And then when that goes well and the bar speed is good and you've maintained technique, then clearly you have a justification to go for a PR. And so a PR would be the next kilo increment, or the next 5-pound increment. So again, if you've got a 275 max, even a 290 max, just set it up to go for 295, rather than shooting for 3 plates or 300 or 305, because what if you do set it up for that bigger number and you miss, which so often happens? Then where are you? Where's your strength? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's 295. Maybe, if you go for 3 plates and you miss it, where's your max? Is it 310, 305? I have no idea, and neither do you. So if you take that incremental PR, you set yourself up for success. So clearly in a competition, we approach it a little bit differently, because there's there are consequences for missing a lift. And in other words, the consequence of you missing a lift is that it discounts your total. You're going to have a smaller total at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, you're trying to build the largest total possible. If you're just maxing out in the gym, then there's really no consequence of missing, other than, potentially if you YOLO'd or put something stupid on the bar, you could be setting yourself up for injury. But again, if you miss in the gym, it's no big deal, just because it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't count for anything. You just missed, but if you miss in a competition, there's consequences of that. But so again, I think in a competition, we pretty much set it up for a small incremental PR. If I'm working with somebody like Ray Williams, clearly because his strength is so much higher than most people, he might be able to go for a 5 kilo or a 10-pound PR or something like that. But most of us are going to take that next incremental PR over our current one. In the gym, I beg people to do that, because again, if you miss the milestone, then where are you? So just go ahead in the gym. And in the gym, you have unlimited attempts, right? At a competition, you only have 3. So at a competition, it's actually like a game. In the gym, you can take 5 or 6 bench attempts if you want. So take the small incremental PR, and then if you do it and it moves well, and maybe you recorded it on your camera phone or whatever, and it feels good, then go up another 5 or 10 pounds. But again, if you start out and shoot too large and miss, then where are you? So I think that's kind of where the strategy comes in. Clearly, there's going to be some strategy in a powerlifting competition, because it's like you're playing The Price is Right, where you're trying to name that number and hit that number as high as you can without going over. So, in a powerlifting meet, when you miss an attempt, The other expense is that it fatigues you to the extent, like if it's a squat that you miss, it could fatigue your back so that and tire you out for both the bench press and the deadlift. So clearly there's some strategy, but those are the percentages that we've found produce the greatest results. So just again, that would be a 91% first attempt, about a 96.5 second attempt, and then the third attempt would be an incremental choice of PR. And then in terms of warming up for that, what I like to do is count backward. So you basically determine your opener and you count backward down to the bar. I think the mistake that most people make, particularly Americans, and I'm guessing that's most of your listeners, right? They just go in and they throw 135 on the bar, right? And that's their first set, and they're lazy, so they're just going to add quarters and plates. Well, that is.
I'm laughing because that's what I do.
That's what I do too.
Look, God made 10s, 5s, and 2s, guys, right? You got to love those weights too, right? So here's the deal. I mean, clearly, if you're a 400-pound lifter, a squatter, or deadlifter, yeah, you can make jumps like that. But what I'm saying is here's where the math gets mixed up. If you start at 135 and you go to 185, that's a 50-pound jump, right? When you go from 185 to 225, that's a 40-pound jump. Now people throw on another quarter. Oops, you just went up 50 pounds. So you did a 40 and then a 50. So you don't want your math to be irregular. So basically, we count backward down to the bar. So typically, our last warm-up is roughly in the squat and the deadlift, right around 83%. So again, you can pull out your calculator, and your last warm-up is roughly around 83%. In the bench, it's slightly heavier because you want to warm up slightly closer to your opener in the bench press just because the muscle groups are smaller and you can't make as large of progressions in the bench as you can in the other lifts. I mean, I know it's all math, but at the end of the day, you're taking smaller increases because larger increases are going to jolt your nervous system and kind of shock you. So in the bench press, the last warm-up would be 85%. So from there, once you've determined your last warm-up, you count backward to the bar, making sure that you're taking incremental jumps that line up fluidly. They can either be pretty much the same or they have to get smaller as you approach the opening attempt, if that makes sense. So you can take a big jump and then get smaller, but then you don't want to go ahead and take another big jump because that serves to shock the nervous system. So that's where just using plates and quarters kind of doesn't make much sense. You need to make things a little bit more fluid and a little bit more incremental. So
what kind of increment would you say? Like a 30-pound, like, well, whatever. I guess we'll do a squat.
Yeah. So roughly, I think you can jump up approximately. I mean, you can jump up approximately 10% per set. You know, maybe even a little bit more on a test day. Maybe like 11 or 12% until you get to about 80% or 77.5%. And then your jumps need to be a little bit smaller. You know, then you're talking about 5% jumps or something like that. So if you like using percentages, again, your jumps can be bigger in the beginning. But again, I just like counting backward. So I determine that last warm up and then I just count backwards. So if you want me to let's use an example. Let's say we have somebody who's a 495-pound deadlifter, right? Is that good? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. That's 5 plates on the bar on each side.
5 plates on the bar, right? So there are 5 plates on the bar. So 495, and we multiply that by 0.83. So we get 410. So 410, again, don't be lazy. Don't load 4 plates. Put the 2.5s on. 410, right? 410 is going to be your, again, specificity here. Be smart. So load 410, that's going to be your last warm-up. And so then what I would do is I would count backward to the bar. So, probably, and again, I'm just jotting this down as we're talking because I didn't necessarily think we were going to do this, but I would probably, if 410 is their last warm-up with a 91% opener, they're opening at 450, right? So that's a 40-pound jump from 410 to 450. So we wouldn't want to take a 30-pound jump from our second to last warm-up to our, last warm-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Again, yeah. So I would probably make it in the 350th range. Let's just call it 350. So that would be a 60-pound jump from 350 to 410. And again, I know we're going backwards. I apologize for that. But then I would probably make it like a maybe like a 275, because then that's going to be like a 75-pound jump. And then maybe back to like 205 and 135. So let's just say that. I mean, that's not necessarily exactly how I would do it, but that kind of works out incrementally. So if we start with 135, we take a 70-pound jump to 205, another 70-pound jump to 275, and then let's say we go to 345, let's say. That would be a 65-pound jump, and then we jump to 410. So it's just, the key is you want your jumps to get progressively smaller as you get closer to your opening attempt. You just don't want to take irregular jumps, because that's going to serve to jolt and shock the nervous system. It's like jumping into a pool of cold water, and it's going to shock you, and your performance is going to go down.
So now I have a question. Now, we're talking about maxing out here and going for a 1-rep max in a powerlifting meet, but does this apply to actually everyday gym training in general? So if I'm working up to, let's just say 405 on squats today, should I be doing that same type of warm-up? Because my typical warm-up is the bar, 1 plate, 2 plates, 3 plates, 4 plates. That's usually my warm-up for squats. I don't know if that's too much. Is it too little? Like, so how would you normally go about that for average session?
So, all right, I'm going to use you as an example. You just squatted 540 pounds at your last competition, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so 405 actually represents 75% of your 1-rep max, of your competition PR. So you could probably jump, look, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I mean, if you're doing 405, clearly you can probably do that for 5 to 8 reps, right? I mean, you're doing...
Yeah, well, probably more. I mean, I just do 4 plates out, 405 out there.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, 405 is a pretty easy weight for you. So, again, I would probably, again, this is just me being anal. I would count backward to the bar to 50%. So maybe I would use 540 and multiply it by 65%. So again, I would probably jump from 350 to 405. And then counting back from there, I would probably go 295. And again, this is 10% jumps. So maybe you would do a 135, a 225, a 295, and a 350, and then go to 405. And I bet you your performance would increase, Anthony, because I'm telling you, I bet you it would. The 405 would actually feel better because your muscles and your central nervous system would be more primed and more ready, as opposed to you just taking those 90-pound jumps. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying?
Pete, I hope you're paying attention, man, because next time we work out, this is what you got to do.
I was just thinking that, too. And actually, I have a follow-up question to that. So those earlier sets, the warm-up sets, even the 1 plates and 2 plate sets that are much lighter than your last warm-ups or your maxing sets, how do you go about determining how many reps to do, or is that just all singles?
So I think so again, if this is a max day, then we're going to use the analogy, the gas tank analogy, and we want to save as much gas as we possibly can for the max attempts, right? For the 3 attempts or the attempts we're using in the gym to test our max. So clearly I would use a pyramid style of kind of warming up. Obviously we should be starting with the bar. Clearly, I think we can all agree with that. If you're not starting with the bar, trust me, start with the bar. 500 and 600 pound squatters are still starting with the bar. So put the bar on there. Maybe bang out 8 to 10. That's more or less just you getting mobile and stretching. And then maybe put on 135. And I'm thinking probably no more than 5, really. And if you feel like you need to do that again, rack the bar and maybe do it again for like a double or a triple. Again, that's so light in the scheme of things that you're just kind of using it to stretch. And then I would probably hit 2 plates for like a triple, and then probably doubles and singles the rest of the way out. So
that's exactly how I kind of warm up too.
Yeah, that's how you warm up, because again, you want to save with every single rep that you do, with every single warm up, you're using up gas. And if you're maxing out, then you want to save as much gas as you possibly can for the max out sets. Now, if Anthony's going to the gym and he's going to hit 405 for like a 5x5, and he's trying to add in extra volume, well, then you can make an argument for doing higher repetitions on those lower sets to accrue more total volume. But the flip side of that is, again, he's using up a lot of gas in his tank to get up to the 405. So even if you're doing a 405 for a 5x5, right, you might still want to kind of pyramid up so that you're saving all the gas, and all the glycogen in your muscles for that, for the 25 reps of squats you have to do. So you can make a pretty strong case for kind of pyramiding up that way as well.
See, guys, this is why Matt is the best in the industry. He's just a wealth of knowledge. And, Matt, we can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast today. And I think we're going to educate a lot more people on just how to go about doing a 1-rep max test right, because I think a lot of people go about it wrong, especially on meet day. I've seen a lot of lifters just completely bomb, like you said, and I think you got to leave your ego at the door also when it comes down to writing this stuff down.
Yeah, it's not always the strongest lifter who wins, but oftentimes the smartest or the one who makes the most attempts. You're clearly going to have the genetic freaks who are far out ahead of people and who can succeed while missing lifts, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've had a good performance. Winning with 4 or 5 attempts is not what I would characterize as a good performance. Clearly you want to come off the platform making as many attempts as you can, and so there's nothing sacrosanct or so sacred about making 9 other than it increases the probability of you building your very biggest total. So, exactly. More attempts is better from that standpoint.
Exactly. Matt, where can everybody find out more about you? I know you have your own podcast, and where can our listeners find out more about you and follow you? Because, like I said, this guy's a wealth of knowledge.
That's right. So we've got an SSPT podcast, and it's on iTunes. It's called Upholding the Standard. We certainly don't come out with the frequency or the ferocity that you guys do. I'll tip my cap to you guys. You guys do this a lot more frequently. But we come out with about 1 a month, and so you can find us on iTunes there. Of course, you can find me on Instagram at MLGary72. Of course, you can connect with me on Facebook just at Matt Gary. And those are the kind of the best ways to follow me and connect with me.
All right, Pete, buddy, it's your turn.
All right, guys. Pete and Anthony with Matt Gary, New York Muscle Radio, and we're out.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.